Emmer from Ellers Financial will be taking you through the financial piece of the presentation, and we'll certainly be around to answer any questions that you might have as well. What I want to start with is taking you through kind of how we got to this point, just so everyone can understand the process that was used. The Board of Education has a Building and Grounds Committee. That's one of the sub-working committees of the board. And on this committee, there are 3 board members, and they meet a minimum of quarterly. But an annual task of the committee is to always review our facilities plan and then what our needs are. And that is a requirement of the Minnesota Department of Education in their a program called long-term facility maintenance. One of the things that we have noticed and have been keeping an eye on over the past few years has been the amount of leaking in the roof on the 2002 portion of the building. Keep in mind, what we're talking about really has nothing to do with the addition that was done in 2007 or 2015. We're talking about the original school building that opened in 2002. And the other thing that has been triggering a lot of maintenance costs over the past couple of years has been the rooftop units, the heating and cooling units that sit on the roof. In terms of the number of times they're breaking down, and of course the expense it takes to try to repair them. And then the older those units get, the harder it is to find parts to keep repairing those. So the frequency of both the water infiltration and the rooftop units really triggered the board to look at getting a facilities analysis study completed in the spring. We had kind of started this work pre-COVID, the discussions anyway. And of course, we know in March of 2020, things kind of halted there for a while, which made this process obviously a little bit more complex than in different processes we've used in the past. With that said, R.A. Morton then was able to complete all the facilities analysis in May of 2020. And we've published all these materials on our website under the facilities section on our homepage. Then, after the facilities analysis was completed, we had worked on getting a community task force together to start meeting in the fall of 2020. And they were first tasked with looking at this facilities analysis, and Preston came and talked with them. Obviously, things were done virtually. And so the next step in the process was something that was new to the district. We used a third party to conduct a public input survey. With COVID and the different things we couldn't do and couldn't do as a school, we thought this might be a good avenue to use during the pandemic. And then by contracting with a third party, it takes the bias out of, or perceived bias out of a school district doing their own survey. So the Board of Education took that recommendation, and then they ended up hiring the School Perceptions out of Slinger, Wisconsin, to conduct this public input survey, which ran from mid-September through early October. The board wanted this process to be data-driven and to be as transparent as possible. School Perceptions took the data from the survey and then presented their findings to the board on October 19th, and then back to the Facilities Task Force on October 21st. The board then discussed the results and the recommendations from the task force on November 9th and approved a submission of possible projects to the Minnesota Department of Education. Then on November 23rd, given the feedback and recommendations, they approved a 2-question ballot on November 23rd. And there are only certain days in the calendar year school districts can have elections. So the one that fit closest to our timeline was February 9th. And the district did end up getting a positive review and comment from MDE on December 29th, 2020. And again, that's published online. And then kind of bullet points down there. All reports and materials are published on our website under the facilities section. And then we have public meetings, which we're at that phase now. We had one on the 27th. We have obviously the one tonight, and we have a final one on February 3rd. And it's worked out well for people to join, either on Zoom or Facebook Live or via our YouTube channel. And then election day is coming Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. The polls will be open from noon to 8 p.m. So about the community survey results, like I said, school perceptions did this process because they were contracted with the district. They are very well versed in the school data collection realm of expertise by doing over 10,000 surveys for communities and schools. As I said earlier, Lakeview ran its survey from mid-September through early October. And residents everyone had one mailed to them, but they also had the opportunity to do it online if they wanted to, using a unique access code for validity. Lakeview did very well in the number of responses. We had a 30% participation rate, which for a survey is very good statistically speaking. Usually if you get about 20 to 25%, you're doing well. So we ended up with 381 responses. The data has a plus minus margin of error of 5.1%. This is where the responses came from. And again, the data only focused on residents that are able to vote in the upcoming election. Non-resident data was filtered out for the reporting part of the process. We got some good information about some other things besides facilities. So in this grouping, you can see the different items on here. And overall, this is a 4-point scale. So everything on here was very close to 3 or higher in terms of building pride, maintaining facilities, communications, and things like that. So this gave the Board of Education and the task force very good information on the perception of the school district. "94% of all respondents were either satisfied or very satisfied with the school district. Then we took some of the key items, like I mentioned with the leaking roof, the HVAC units, parking lot, etc., and we put this into what was called a base plan. And this is what was presented to the public at that time in the fall. And at that time, the base plan was a little over 7 million. So the response back from the public survey was 63% were in the yes category of supporting the base plan. And only 15% were in the no category of the base plan, while another 22% were undecided. And typically, as you would know, typically people there wanting more information, and then some will become, yes, and then some will probably become no. But the overall data indicated very strong support for the base plan. Then, if you remember back to the survey, there were individual projects put in there, anywhere from windows to track resurfacing to football field to bleachers, etc. And the one, this is only a 3-point scale, and so typically anything around 2, and we're looking at the non-parent residents. This is typically the column that you have to do the most communication with to try to garner support. Because typically your staff is going to be well informed, your parents are going to be well informed. So this is why, you know, we're having these public meetings and communications to try to get information out to everybody. So from this data, basically the auditorium, the walking paths, and the windows and floors were suggested to move into the base plan. And that's what the task force recommended. And then anything that was kind of below that 2 on that scale meant that there wasn't as much upfront support for those items. And so that probably needed a separate question. So when everything was put together, the total amount, the 10.94 million, now that overall support was at 46%, still only 25% were a firm no, but the undecideds were now 29%. So what that told us as a committee and as a board was a lot of strong support for the base plan. And then typically if everything's put together, a lot of people were still undecided, meaning that they needed more information. So the conclusion from the survey was this: the base plan had the strong support of 64% upfront, which included the parking lot, the rooftop units. And there was also strong support shown for the auditorium, the doors, the windows. So those were moved to question 1. And then question 2 then focuses on the outside or activities portions of the facilities. So that's really the reason for the 2 questions, was the data that was got back from the community survey. And I will turn it over to Preston, and Preston will talk us through the budget, the projects, and take us through some of the things he saw in the facilities analysis. Preston?
Thanks, Mr. Fensky. So from the facilities analysis information and from the information provided from the survey results, we looked at pricing each of these items individually, but then kind of categorized them in some of the larger components. And that's what you see on the screen here now is the more major components. Looking at question 1, the HVAC or heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and plumbing upgrades at 2.044 million is to replace 35 rooftop units and replacement of interior plumbing fixtures throughout the building. The security and communications upgrades at 294,000 were to update camera systems and public address systems. Roof replacement was a high priority at 1.7 million. I'll show you a graphic in a few minutes that shows the areas of the roofing that we're looking to replace. The caulk joints and eaves repair is to replace the caulk joints at the precast, which is the building itself is made of precast panels, and there are caulk joints between each of those precast panels that needed to be replaced. And then also to repair or update the wall insulation system of the other building system. Maintenance items included doors and hardware, windows, vinyl composite tile, flooring, carpeting, renovating locker rooms, the showers in the locker rooms, and then auditorium items, as well as the kitchen flooring and freezer and cooler replacement. Under the site improvements, that includes milling and replacing the original parking lot, fixing some walking paths, and then working on the playground rubber tiles and equipment. So that total on the question 1 construction cost was $7,561,000. Other costs or financing costs, oh, I'm sorry, taking a step back from that. We also included fees, permits, and testing at $877,000. We also assigned contingencies to address anything that will come up as an unknown during the planning cycle and during construction. And as the costs were calculated under existing current conditions for costs, we added an escalation factor also. and all of those total the 7.561 million. The finance costs total of 303,000 added to a final question one bond amount of 7,865,000. In question two, the outdoor activity and field updates at $2.2 million were to resurface the track, repair or add lighting for the baseball and softball fields, replace the scoreboards, also to add turf to the football field, as well as expand the football press box and concessions area, and then converting a softball to the baseball field at the south end of the campus. Fees, permit, and testing again at 330,000. Contingency and escalation factors also added into that, total to a total construction value of 2.850 million. With finance costs again at just under 100,000, the total question two bond amount is $2,950,000. So kind of a quick overview of those two different components for question one and question two. Now we'll take you through some of the components itself a little bit more in detail. The original roofing 2002 was a ballasted roof system, and the typical lifespan for that is in that 15 to 20 year lifespan. And so we looked at replacing those roofs that were in that original 2002 construction. The analysis of the roofing system indicated that we weren't seeing mold yet in the insulation, but that is an item that we are concerned about, and it would be time to replace these roofs to keep that from happening in the future. This is a graphic that shows the different roof sections that were identified, roofs 1 through 9 in the building. Again, part of the 2002 original project. These two pictures represent some of the signs of a failing roof system. And once that rubber roof has hitting the end of its life expectancy, you do start seeing rubber starting to shrink and pulling from the edges of the building, as you can see where the arrows are highlighted in both of these pictures. So ideal timing is to start working on replacement now before it becomes much more of an issue. The rooftop unit replacement, as I mentioned earlier, there are 35 rooftops that we would be replacing. The current maintenance on it is starting to be very frequent, and parts are hard to get. And again, the lifespan of these types of units are around 20 years, so we're right at that point. This highlight graphic shows in the red boxes are all the different rooftop units that we would be replacing. I also mentioned earlier about the parking lot. In the original construction, several areas we're seeing cracks and deteriorating. Even though the district has done seal coating in years prior, it is time to mill and overlay the oldest part of that parking lot. And again, the graphic here shows the area shaded in gray that would be included in the project. Any of the parking lot that was added in the 2015 project would not be addressed at this time. The kitchen coolers and freezers have had ongoing maintenance issues, again with parts being hard to define for those, and so we are looking at replacing those two as part of this construction project. This is a graphic that shows the caulk joints of the precast panels. Again, this is something that is just a maintenance item that needs to be done in this kind of building system. And so we are looking to remove the caulk and then place new backer and caulk at those caulk joint locations. This graphic represents, maybe a little hard to see, but it's the vinyl composite floor tile in one of the hallways. VCT's lifespan is also about 20 years, and so we're looking at just replacing with like type floor tile structure again. Throughout the building, we would be looking at replacing or updating many of the door systems, especially the fire alarm doors that are needed throughout the building for fire separation, as well as upgrade and maintain some of the exterior doors. The safety and security items are focused on the public address system. It is hard to hear in several of the locations, and it would be important to have a good operating system in emergency situations, as well as updating the camera DVR system. The system is again 20 years old, and we would be looking at adding some areas for better coverage. Also included is a bus camera and stop arm cameras for the district-wide bus systems. Under the maintenance and code upgrades, we would be looking at updating the showers in the locker rooms. Current code would require that we would have individual shower stalls, and we would be replacing multi-head common shower fixtures in the locker room areas. The auditorium we would be replacing current stage curtain with new curtain to meet current fire code, and replacing the floor in the kitchen area with a specialized food service approved flooring. Dan from Wendell Architects will now walk us through some of the graphics that highlight the overall pictures that I just represented.
Thank you, Preston. Yep, so this is a floor plan of the building. Gives you a little bit of a better idea of what was all included on the list. So the areas in red, that's where most of the flooring replacement is taking place in the classrooms, and the vinyl tile out in the hallways that you saw the graphic of. The purple circles, yep, like that. Those would be the locations for door replacement. The green area at the back is highlighting the kitchen, where the cooler and freezer work would be occurring, and the tile flooring. You can see the auditorium with the orange highlighting carpet replacement, house lights, curtains and sound system. In the pink there, or the blue, where he's pointing is the locker room shower updates, where we'd be converting those existing group showers into code compliant stalls. Up at the top, there's a list of some other miscellaneous items that aren't as easy to show graphically, but would also be included, like plumbing fixtures and window replacement, caulking of the precast panel joints. This is a site plan showing the exteriors for the question 2 items. You can see at the baseball field, the top, we have lighting and scoreboard highlighted, as well as at the softball field. The main field at the track would be the new turf for football and multi-purpose field. Resurfacing of the track, expanding the press box, the concessions, replacing the scoreboard there, and then converting the softball to baseball field. Also in the middle, playground updates as well for equipment and the tile playing surface.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Just a couple things, some questions the district has been asked. So originally, when the activities complex opened, we haven't really done a lot to that since then. But for those that are familiar with the site, there are 2 2 softball fields here. And if you're, familiar with the community aspect of the different activities that the school grounds are used by, really we're running, student activities preschool, not only through grade 12, but also, we have community use from, town team baseball, get requests for use of softball fields, and things like that. So, it really is a community use facility. And so some of the thought, given by the community, is to address some of these needs, visioning forward for another, 20 years. So that's kind of the timing sequence of everything. The track is at the end of its useful life. And so in terms of efficiency, if you are going to look at a multi-surface type surface for your football field, that would be the time to do it in terms of efficiency. So really what would happen here is one baseball field is not enough for the demand that we have. And so that would be the reasoning for transforming, a softball field into another baseball space. And then actually, as you can see in the diagram here, there would be enough room, and this is a very common practice with people that do have field turf, is to host softball games and those types of things on that surface. So essentially what you are getting is still maintaining 2 softball fields and now getting the 2 baseball fields. And then the upgrading, like with the press box, obviously things are a lot different in 2021 than they were in the early 2000s. Live streaming is a big thing for our district, and we take pride in what we're doing there. But at the same time, there's a lot of equipment that goes with that. And so the traditional, press box was probably meant at that time for the clock operator, a couple of coaches, and so forth. And now with expanded radio coverage and live streaming and game personnel, there isn't the space there anymore. And the same is probably true with the concession areas, hosting bigger events, track meets, football games. The workspace in there is insufficient for what events we're having there now. Some other things, kind of on the football field, we've put together. And again, these are estimates, but when you think about it right now, we're only using that space, in between this track area here, a little over 600 hours a year, which is a large space with really not a lot of use. Just some fixed expenses, for that little amount of hours, the irrigation, some of the supply costs, things like that. And really, a lot of the use on this field is very weather dependent. So if you've had a student in junior high football or elementary football, you might know what I'm talking about, where, sorry kids, there's no game because we can't wreck the varsity field for the football game coming up Friday night, that type of thing. Track and then cheerleading use it right now. So that's pretty much it. And so when you are looking at a multi-surface, some of the calculations we've done was we basically take the usage times 5 and put well on over 3,000 hours a school year. And then you're not going to have, irrigation costs, mowing, painting, reseeding, those types of things are out. Obviously, you're still going to have some maintenance things with making sure the rubber pellets and things like that are spread properly and things like that, but that'll be very minimal. The field can be used over and over with no recovery time between events and ground moisture considerations. So, essentially you can play 5th and 6th grade football on a Saturday and then turn around and play a JV game right on Monday, regardless of the moisture. And then also we'd expand curriculum use through, community ed programming. Soccer's gotten really big in the summer. I mentioned varsity softball, track and field, PE has expressed obviously interest in what they would do out there. Recess for our students, giving them some green space regardless again of weather conditions. Baseball practice could utilize that in the spring, give them a place to get outside of the school, which would open up some time for JO volleyball and some LBA basketball things in the spring. And then youth baseball and softball, like I said, would be able to utilize some of that space out there too. So I think Mr. Hanson, did you want to comment on a couple things?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Chris. Scott Hansen, Principal 712. You know, some of the things too that I've been doing is just looking at some of the schools across the country that have implemented field turf into their schools. And in Ohio, it's been a big trend. Principal Ed Tiernoff, he said that by doing this and creating this multi-purpose facility on their football field, is that we're not just limited to using that field a few months a year just for football practice and for football games. He said it's become a true family environment, and we have done right by our kids. The whole community has embraced it, and they use it for all the programs that you talked about. You know, from small kids to teams to athletics to academics to everything you can think of. It's a true family environment. And then Martin Ferris City School in Ohio said that the cost of maintenance is minute compared to our old grass field. We do have to groom it, but it's like a rake that's pulled behind their yard tractor. You know, like you talked about some of the maintenance, but over time, you know, we have to look at, you know, why not Lakeview? Why not us? If this is a trend that schools are looking forward to doing, you know, 7.9 million kids play high school athletics and participate in high school activities, according to the National Federation of State and High School Associations. And high school facilities are being used more than ever before. And, you know, and if you look at the technologies to make the surface safe, data shows that 44% reduction in concussions, 43% fewer ACL injuries, and 25% less lost time for an injury. And that's from the field turf company itself. You know, so I just hope that, you know, that when we look at this, that we're looking at a, you know, making it the school's the heart of our community. And this is one more thing that makes Lakeview shine. And we just don't want to miss that opportunity. If that opportunity is now, we want to make sure that we do it right the first time. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll turn it over to Matt Hammer from Ellers, and he will take us through the financial picture.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, my name is Matthew Hammer. We're going to start touching on the tax and finance information for the proposed referendum here. And we'll start with taxes. In regards to school taxes in Minnesota, they're spread over typically 2 tax bases. You've probably heard referendum market value potentially thrown out there, and then net tax capacity. And most of your taxes, including this bond referendum, are spread on the net tax capacity tax base. And that's not a decision that the school district or the school board has a say in. It's specified in state law. The referendum that the district and local optional revenue that the district gets, those taxes are not paid by ag land or seasonal rec property, but all the rest of the taxes, including the proposed bond issue, are paid by the entire tax base in the Lakeview School District. So when we look at that, every school district in Minnesota has a different makeup of their property tax base. And this is a snapshot of the Lakeview School District's tax base. So as we scroll to the right, the far right 2 columns, that's the tax base that the proposed building bond issue would be spread on. And you can see in red, we're highlighting qualifying agricultural land. And the reason why we're doing that is it's an important point as we move forward, and we'll spend a little bit more time on that as we go forward. But 71% of the district's tax base is made up of agricultural property, and then 11% is residential homestead, with the other categories they're following. Now, when you think of this as a annual bond payment or your annual debt service payments, this is in essence the proportion of who pays that bill. So if you would take a $100,000 debt service payment and you would split it, qualifying agricultural land would pay about 71,000 of that $100,000 bill, and so on and so forth based on the rest of the property splits, as you can see there. And when we see that qualifying ag land, we're going to talk about the ag to school credit a little bit later and the importance that is playing for the Lakeview School District in regards to the funds and how the project's going to be funded. So this is a amortization schedule, and the details are not the most important thing here, but we've identified the existing commitments of the school district, and then in the middle there is the proposed new debt service spread over the 20-year term. These estimates were prepared late last fall, and I think the important thing to note here is this is the assumption for question one only. And the average interest rate we're assuming is 2.75%. Now, interest rates have come down quite a bit since this time and are at historic lows right now. So assuming the referendum would pass in February and we would issue the bonds likely sometime later this spring, if we can get a lower interest rate, the tax impact that we're showing here is hopefully going to be a conservative tax impact, and there'll be even some additional savings. The other piece here is as your tax base grows, that kind of changes the makeup of your tax rates on your school taxes. The Lakeview School District has been growing fairly flat and consistently over the last number of years. So you can see our assumed growth here is basically for flat net tax capacity growth over the life of the bonds. When we look at this schedule, this is probably is an easier schedule to look at overall. The existing debt that the district currently has is the blue chart here, and then the proposed new debt for question one is the green bars. And the important thing to point out here that those initial bars, when we structure debt for school districts, we have a lot of flexibility with voter approved debt. And we can, to smooth out the impact of taxes over the term of the bonds, we often use a structure like this, which we call a wraparound structure. So those initial 4 years, starting with taxes payable 22 through taxes payable 25, those are interest-only payments that the district would pay initially if the referendum would pass. And then you can see in 25, 26, after the taxes had went up initially, they would be scheduled to go back down between taxes payable 25 and 26. This chart is basically the same charts we were looking at with question one. Again, the same interest rate is assumed, and again, the total here with question one and question two is about $10,815,000 in bonds to fund the projects that the district is looking to need to finance with the referendum questions. So if we look at the next chart again, in essence, it's the identical chart, except the bars are just a little bit higher. So in the initial years, again, through taxes payable in 22, through taxes payable in 25, the district would be paying those initial interest payments. And then again, in taxes payable 25 to 26, there would be a step down in that tax rate that would, where the taxes would go back down. So overall, the plan would have an initial increase in taxes over the first 4 years, and then taxes would come back down again after the existing debt that the school district falls off. Now, when we look at tax impact, this is the tax impact for residential homesteads and commercial property, and the estimates for question 1, question 2, and then the combined total of both questions. This chart, along with additional information, is provided on a tax calculator that is on the district's website. So if a homeowner has a property and they want to take their tax statement and put that estimated market value on that tax statement, let's say it was $172,000, you could put that information into the tax calculator and get your specific tax impact for your parcels of property, if they're residential or commercial based. Here, as you look at this, a $100,000 property for question 1 would be just a little bit less than $2 a month, or $22 annually. And then with question 2, that would be an additional $8 annually, or about 75 cents a month, for a total of $30 annually if both questions pass, or about $2.50 per month in total. As we roll forward, the next slide is going to roll into agricultural property, both homestead and non-homestead. And here we're showing varying levels. I'm just going to pick the $7,000 per acre level right now. And on a $7,000 per acre valued parcel, that would be about 43 cents annually additional for question 1, 16 cents annually for question 2, with a total of just under 60 cents annually. Now, the important thing to point out with these estimates is these do assume the ag credit at the 60% level that's in statute right now. And we'll talk a little bit further about that in the upcoming slides, because it's an important piece to the overall financing of the project for the school district. So the school building bond aid credit is a program that came into place starting with taxes payable 2018 was the initial start. That was the initial legislation that happened in the tax bill in 2017. In 2019, it was subsequently revamped and actually increased. The initial level with the 2017 legislation was at 40%. And then with 2019 legislation, there's been step ups in that percentage, starting with taxes payable 20 all the way through taxes payable 23. So we're at the later stages of the phase in, with the impact of taxes right now being the taxes payable 22 taxes we're talking about with the first year of the bond issue, if the referendum would pass, and then the rest of the taxes for the remaining term of the bonds would be paid at that 70% value. The important thing to point out here is that this applies to all new and existing debt service that the school district has. We'll look at a chart a little bit later that kind of shows the impact that has had over the last number of years. It applies to all agricultural property except for the house, garage, and 1 acre, which is often referred to as the HGA. So for the Lakeview School District, agricultural land, obviously that class 2A land makes up most of the property. There's probably some rural vacant land, class 2B, and it does also apply for class 2C managed forest land, which isn't there's probably not too much of that in the Lakeview School District. The credit is an automatically deducted from property taxes, and shows up on on the tax statement automatically as the county auditors spread those taxes on an annual basis. And the credit is paid by the state, which means that it isn't a shift of the levy to the other taxpayers within the school district. It is coming directly from the state of Minnesota and is sent to the district, offsetting those payments that egg owners would have typically made through their property tax levies. Here is that example of a proposed tax statement, and owners or egg owners in the district are already seeing the school building bond credit on their existing taxes for the existing debt the district has. But important point here is that it shows up on that credit, and property owners don't have to fill out any forms. They don't have to do anything. It automatically comes on and is applied to the taxes on an annual basis. So when we look at the building bond egg credit payments and the overall debt here, assuming that both questions would pass, the state aid through the egg credit would pay about 50% of those debt service payments over the term of the bonds. So when you think back when we were looking at that chart that highlighted the 71% qualifying egg property, that 71% times 70% gets us to the 50% of state aid that's coming through the program. And then the other splits there were instead of paying 71% of the bill, egg land and buildings are now paying approximately 22%. With the rest of the residential and commercial other property owners paying about 28% of the overall taxes. So when you think back pre-2018, this chart would basically be orange from where it is orange all the way through the gray. So that's the significant change that has happened over the last few years as the egg credit is phasing in to its level at 70%. So when we look at this over time, this is a chart that we put together that identifies annual debt service taxes for Lakeview School District, assuming a $7,000 homestead acre. And starting back in 2017, there was no egg credit in place. And you can see that taxes at that point in time were about $5.77 per acre. Now they've been coming down as the egg credit's been phasing in every year. And the existing debt is those blue bars that you see. Now, as we bring on the new debt, which is the orange bars, that 59 cents, for assuming both questions passed, would be added on top of the pay 22, the existing $2.45. And then you can see subsequently come back down as it phases all the way up to 70%. And taxes in 2023 would actually be lower even with the new debt service than they currently are, that egg owners are paying in taxes payable 2021. Now we're gonna just shift to talking about a few tax refund and deferral programs that apply to other taxpayers in the district. There's two main programs. And here these programs do require taxpayers to fill out a form. The forms are typically filled out and required to be filled out in August of each year. And there's a link to the Department of Revenue's website here to get access to the forms, or obviously you can consult with a tax professional to help you fill out the forms and see if you would qualify for any tax relief through these programs. The first program is the main tax refund program, which is the homestead credit refund program. It refund that's on a sliding scale based on your total property taxes as a whole, including your school taxes, county taxes, and any property taxes that you're paying. And then it's also based on your income. This report program is often referred to as the circuit breaker program, just because of its income limitations and the sliding scale that determines what kind of refund you can qualify for. The maximum refund is $22,840 for homeowners and $2,210 for renters. So it's an important piece that renters can even qualify for the program. The special property tax refund isn't based on income, but it does apply. It's a single year program that applies if your taxes go up more than 12% and over $100 from the prior year. So that's total school tax or total taxes, not just school taxes, for those two programs. And then the last program is a deferral program. There is no refund with this program. It just allows property taxpayers that are 65 years of age or older to defer a portion of their property taxes on their homes to subsequent years. This is the team and Greg Crow and myself that have been working with the school district on the project. So if there's any subsequent questions, I'll hang on till afterwards and we'll be available to answer any questions folks have.
Thank you, Matt. Just some things, election information. So this would have been out probably to, you probably got two pieces of information in your mail. One was the informational voting information with all the project scope and things like that from the school district. And then the other one was just a notice of election. Regardless, the information is the same. So precinct 1 encompasses, the following townships that are listed there. I'm not going to go through them one by one. And then the Wood Lake Community Center precinct 2 encompasses the following townships there. And then if absentee is an option for you, Yellow Medicine County is handling that. And then there'll actually be, Janelle Tim is actually going to have the office open this upcoming Saturday in the afternoon for people that want to vote in person absentee. Otherwise, you can do everything through the mail. Now, for questions and comments, we have Mr. Lallam moderating on Facebook Live again. And then I have the Zoom platform here. If you are on Zoom, I guess we'll start with you. You should have the ability to unmute your mic and then ask a question if you have one. So if you're on the Zoom platform, I'll let you go first. If anyone has a question, you can unmute your mic and ask it. And if there's nothing on Zoom, then we'll head over to Facebook to see if there's anything.
This is Kurt Lawagi on Zoom.
Hey, Kurt, I can hear
have
you.
A question about the turf field.
Sure.
The lifespan, I understand, is approximately 20 years. What will be the estimated replacement cost for that at that time when that needs to be replaced?
Sure. Yep, good question. So typically, Kurt, the lifespan for that I've researched on field turf is actually 15 to 20. That would depend on the amount of usage too. Typically, probably a larger school with a lot more use than what we're looking at would probably be that 15. And then we're probably looking around that 20. So, and then to answer your question, it's about a $5 per square foot cost to replace that. So you're probably going to be around that $350,000 mark.
And would that come back as another referendum question, or would that be built into the school's budget then to replace that?
Yep, another good question. So typically how most schools do that, Kurt, is they do, if you remember early on, I mentioned, I don't know if you were on or not, but I mentioned that long-term facility maintenance program. And that's typically how schools would pay for that. They would treat that just like you would like flooring or carpet in your building. So you'd set aside some dollars in that long-term facility maintenance to cover that replacement cost. Because when you replace the turf, you're just doing the carpet basically. You're not doing the whole cement base and things like that. You know, all the excavation work and things like that. So that typically, to answer your question, no, that would not have to be a referendum question. Again, that could be done through different funding mechanisms like long-term facility maintenance.
Okay. How do you expect the field to be used on months like right now? You know, it'd be covered in snow. You expect that you'd be able to do snow removal on there without significant damage to the surface, so that it's clear.
Yep. So typically, well, we ended up buying a certain attachment this year because we did have, with the fall sports getting delayed, we did have to clear snow. You know, push it off to the side a little bit. So the challenge with the football field now, obviously, is the crown in the middle, so you have to be really careful. But with the turf, yes, we do have a blade basically that could push the snow just like you would on a concrete surface type of thing and clear space that way. So.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks. Anyone else on Zoom have anything? Facebook, anything?
Got I had one thing just to Jody Isaacson was kind of concerned about the overburden of taxes, so I just want to address that briefly again.
The question with what?
Like just being concerned with overburden with taxes, being overburdened with taxes.
You know, comment on Facebook in regards to taxes. If the information that was sent home had area comparison of Lakeview compared to area schools. So for example, in Lakeview School District currently, an estimated $150,000 house has a $542 annual tax impact. Minneota is $580. Montevideo is a little under $600. Marshall's a little over $600. Dawson Boyd $720. Canby's at $737. Renville is around a little under $900. McRae is over $1,000. So I guess the point about tax impact is Lakeview is one of the lower school districts in the area when you compare tax impact for school district to our neighbors. And here's another statistic for you in regards to tax impact. Lakeview does not have a voter approved operating levy. Funding in the state of Minnesota right now, basically if you figure the per pupil funding, which right now is $6,567 per student, that's $503 under inflation since 2002, which means other schools have had to go to their voters and ask for additional funding per pupil, what's called an operating levy. That average operating levy in the state of Minnesota right now is $846 on top of all the state approved levy and funding formulas. Lakeview, our operating levy right now is $0. So if you want to talk tax burden and tax impact, we've been very fiscally responsible, and that's why we are one of the lower ones in the area.
One more. Do you want to address the timing of like why was so Terry Frank was just concerned about the timing of getting feedback from like farmers when it went out in September, October. So can you talk about like why the survey and all that? How was the timing set up?
the timing was set up for, well, basically the facilities analysis review is always done kind of in the spring. And then I had mentioned the, the board, we had concern over the increasing frequency of leaking in the roof. And then the importance of keeping the mold out of the insulation deck is what Preston alluded to. If we were to get mold in the insulation, which was then spread down into the sheetrock and things like that, we'd be looking at a larger scope and even more expensive project. So to answer the question, it was really expedited because of the need to do the roof. And then with the COVID pandemic, the solution was to get input via the survey, and all residents had an opportunity to provide feedback with the survey, either via paper or electronic. And then the feedback we got back is the data we used to move forward. So also in terms of interest rates, as Matt alluded to, interest rates are at historic lows. So in terms of timing and running projects right now, you probably couldn't ask for better timing in terms of interest rates and having a referendum for these types of projects.
That's all I have.
Any other questions from Zoom? The idea with the football field, it'd be similar to I got a question, open to the general public or access be gated and locked. Typically, if you're familiar with our school facilities right now, we've taken the community approach. So for example, if you walk on our track, it's open in the morning. And until, we'd have, vandalism or something like that, where we would need to look at locking it. Typically it is open. So, I mean, if, kids wanted to go out and throw the football around or something, if there was no school activity or something like that, or if people still wanted to walk on the new track, certainly that's still going to be available to general public, as long as obviously there's not school activities and things like that going on. And in terms of, rental, we would, treat it just like facility rental with people do with our gyms or organizations do with our auditorium. It's just another space the district would have that would be available. So good question.
I have another question.
Yep.
How many firms bid this project?
Preston, there's a question on bids. How does the bid process work?
Very good question. Obviously, the budget is set at the referendum bond amounts. And so what we will do is manage the project exactly to that or less than that budget amount. That'll be a concerted effort during the design and bidding process. The bids will be an open, competitive bid process to the lowest qualified bidders throughout the various trade sections of work. And so we will focus on segmenting the project in order to take advantage of the local contractor base, and we'll market aggressively to the local and regional contractors for them to prepare a qualified bid for the project. And we're able to select the lowest qualified bidder in every section of work. So concrete will be separate from masonry, would be separate from roofing, from mechanical, electrical. All of those will be separate bid scopes that will be bid out to that local and regional contractor base. Did that answer the question?
Yep, that was, yep.
They see it like 20 seconds later, so.
That would be similar to what Preston's talking about. If you remember, this is before my time, but 2002, when they built the original building, they used a general contractor, which basically means that those people kind of brought in everybody for every scope of work, where, well, like with the addition, R.A. Morton, like Preston was alluding to, we had the opportunity for anyone, any local contractors to submit bids for scopes of work, which was successful and gives, like you said, local companies and contractors an opportunity to put a bid in.
Hey, Chris, Scott Hansen here again, principal for Lakeview. What did you say the cost was a year for the maintenance and usage of the grass field right now?
Well, we have estimates because we don't have separate water meters on the football field. So we kind of had to do is we came up with a rough, so it's around 6,000, you know, for irrigation. And around 7,500, you know, we buy bulk paint for baseball, softball, football, and the fertilizers, and obviously the football field is mowed quite a bit. So, and that does not include any cost of working labor to mow or do things like that. So
roughly about 14,
Yeah.
14,000.
right around there. Yep.
You know, and like you said, the replacement cost of the turf. So if you take that times 20, that's right around 300,000 over a 20-year time span. Correct?
Yep. And that was kind of probably Kurt's question. So yes. Yep.
Then if you look at the hours of usage, you said it was used, what'd you say it was right now about?
So what I calculated out for us at Lakeview is about 608 hours per average year that we're using that space. And in my lower, I think on the slide here, you can primarily see this is all we use it for right now.
Right.
And if weather is inclement, obviously that knocks out the possibility of hosting JV, junior high, and elementary football games because we've tried to preserve the surface for the varsity football games.
And then if you put in the field turf, you got 3,000 hours per year. You take that times 20 years, that's 60,000 hours of usage, you know, compared to about 13,000 hours of usage for 608 hours per year. You know, so when you talk about, you know, the people that I've talked to, the phone calls that I've made, you know, that's been the big question. You know, the elephant in the room is the turf field, you know, but if you look at dollar to dollar, you can look at the egg tax credit. You know, Lakeview's got an opportunity to be a front runner, not just in academics, but also in their facilities, both indoor and outdoor. And you know, also with the reduction of injuries because of the turf and the amount of people that can use it. You know, like that principal from Ohio said, he said it's definitely a family atmosphere. And, you know, when you look at that amount of usage, it sure makes sense.
I think the one thing I did not put in here too is you're also the possibility of renting your facility. So if you have something like this and you do have inclement weather, you're going to have other schools around you that are going to want to come here and use your facility, which is going to bring people to town. You know, the lights and some of those things are going to allow tournaments and things like that to run, which again is good for the community in terms of, you know, restaurant, gas, those types of things. So you do have a lot more possibilities with different things you can do that have different economic values. A couple comments people have made to me too is the need to look at it. You know, obviously people seem to understand the leaking roofs and things like that, but I guess the importance of visioning out. You know, these are not things you want to be on you don't want to be on the ballot every other year trying to do projects willy-nilly, so to speak. You have to kind of have a visioning plan. You know, ideally, when the building opened on a 30-year bond, you know, that was probably, it was going to be a challenge to get the roof to last that long. And so we did refinance and knock some years off the bond and got it down to, we knocked 5 years off. You know, and originally we wanted to hang on, you know, for 4 more years until we could. The ideal part would have been to do this when the original debt was going to retire, and then you could go and run these types of projects. But to be honest with you, we can't risk having mold and things like that inside the school. And then I just mentioned the increased cost that would be to have damage in the insulation deck and then down below. And so the prudent thing to do is to do it now and for the safety of everyone. And at the same time, with interest rates being low and the tax impact and the egg tax credit, taking advantage of that, phasing up, kind of what Matt's point, you know, for 4 years, and then taxes are going to actually decrease to where they are right now, a little bit lower than what they are right now. And so it's that vision question. What do you want your facilities to be for the next 20 years? And I think, you know, these will address those for a good 20 years. Any other? We're good. No more questions on Facebook. Anything else in Zoom? If you do think of questions, you know, my email, chrisfensky@lakeview2167.com. Feel free to, you know, send me an email. We do have a frequently asked questions document on our website. That has been updated. That's posted. Matt alluded to the property tax calculator. That is on our website. That's a good tool. Eller's number is there for support. If you have questions, feel free to give them a call. But basically, all the resources and information you should need to make an informed decision is there. And if, like I said, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me, give me a call, shoot me an email, and I will get back to you. Thank you for taking the time to learn more tonight. We would appreciate your support on February 9th, but the most important thing is please remember to vote. So stay safe and have a great